Welcome back. And this is the second half of Neptune Part 2, Out of the Blue. And we're going to have about 15 minutes left. So thanks for joining me. And let's get back to the lecture. So this chart is David Cassidy, and I gave it a nickname for the dramatic effect. But this is David Cassidy's chart that we've been talking about. He shared the generation with Tom Petty. They were the same age. They entered the world and left the world in the same years. They had a lot in common. They had generational signatures that they shared. And the largest one would be Pluto and Leo. And then the next one would be Neptune in Libra. And the next would be Uranus in Cancer. And then Chiron in Sagittarius. Saturn in Virgo. Jupiter in Aquarius is not really a generational sign. Neither is Saturn, for that matter. But they all have that in common. And I did want to say about Pluto and Leo that the Leo-Aquarius axis is an axis of remembering one's enlightened and co-creative abilities alongside Creator. The enlightenment is what many people equate to remembrance of Atlantis and an enlightened egalitarian society, one that was cooperative for the most part, and people of higher mindedness, like-mindedness and higher mindedness were able to work together toward peace and cooperation and social equanimity. And then the other side of that axis is our creative abilities that are heightened through mutual effort, cooperation, trying to strive for the betterment of all people. And that these co-creative abilities that are inherent in all of us, Leo, can actually work in league and alongside Creator. I've got the sun coming up here, so I better hurry up. This chart fell on me. I just happened to look at when he was born, and like I said, find the correlation to Tom's chart, which I had just done, and this chart came to me. David is a remarkable man. I have come to love him as a performer, as a person. And, you know, I didn't know anything about him other than his early television career, but we tend to think of people as icons or certain characteristics or certain performances and sort of typecast them as how they were seen on the screen or in print. He was very human. He's highly intelligent. I mean, he's got an Aquarius moon. And like I said, he and Tom just had an awful lot in common. They were both brilliant artists in their own right. So let me put it into high gear here. David has a moon in Aquarius and also what we call a Jupiter moon, so to speak. The speed and nature of his moon is rather slow. His moon is rather slow. It is last quarter square, waning square to the sun. And that means that his emotional body is lagging behind his mental body, his physical body, and his psychic body, so to speak. He is learning emotional lessons this lifetime, and he's learning to trust that emotional body that's going to propel him into greater emotional strength and security. But the emotional part of David is something that is, with the moon being slow in his chart, is something that's lagging a little bit behind the mental body and the physical body and the drive that he has and the impulse that he has to perform and do and create and be, his spontaneous nature. It takes him a while to assimilate emotional lessons, and he's the first to admit this. He was not good at long-term, serious, meaningful relationships. But he is also seeking emotional independence this lifetime. If you look at the signature from the South Node to the North, it's a rather codependent existence with the South Node in Libra. And he's striving toward or leaning toward a rather independent relationship right here with the Sun in Aries. What this speaks to is, again, it has nothing to do with not dealing with people or being isolated or alone. It means he is full and well and complete within himself. And when he is in the right relationship, he can give fully and completely and wholly to that other person. And he is seeking someone of a like nature. And he's seeking that in his friends as well. And he's hoping for that and encouraging that in his family. A completeness in the other, so that he does not have to feel dependent on the other. And with this signature too that I've seen before, it's quite possible that he, in his lifetime, was really truly seeking an open marriage or open partnership. Because the way I look at it, the way I read it, between his family and his close friends, his true love was animals. He was never without a dog, and he raised horses, and they were his outlet and his joy and his bliss. And that's where I feel he could truly relate. And he could find a partner that was like that. Perhaps he did. I don't know. But he's really looking for someone who has a very intuitive nature and is free as a wild horse. Let's put it that way. It's really a higher type of a relationship that I'm trying to describe, and it's the kind of relationship that eagles and dolphins and wild dogs and horses have and can find in the natural scheme of things, ninth house. His evolutionary impulse is to individuate and break free of all forms of past conditioning. Essential themes are repeated over and over again in a chart. We already went over that. The moon is slow. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. With this fourth house signature, you can see how he was very much treated in very symbolic ways as a child. I mean, his first real big break in show business, other than his dramatic starring roles on different TV shows, was a Partridge Family. That's where he really became known. He became a household name, so to speak, and gained just skyrocketed to popularity, even though he felt very ambivalent about it at the time. But as you can see with the South Node and this very familial signature, this is what is familial and secure to him. And it's what his soul is actually remembering in a very subconscious way. So look at this familial role of the Partridge Family. And this is a photo of him after a concert where so many times they had to wrap him in a blanket and hide him in the car. Well, it does speak to the child again. And these images are just symbolic of the intrinsic nature of the chart. Let's see, fourth house Neptune. He's redefining parental and social and familial relationships. When I see someone with Pluto and Leo in the second house, and a very strong parental familial signature in the fourth house South Node, I know that they're looking for a higher form of social and familial relationships, meaning that he is probably seeking Father, Mother, God this lifetime. And I can say that because he had a father that was abusive, and what that does is it because he was used to being taken care of, South Node in fourth house, he was propelled and pretty much directed to find parents within himself, or parents within the parents from source, or parents from beyond, or parents that were spiritual parents. That's what happens when you don't really get what you need from one or both of your parents in lifetime, is you're pretty much forced to find a strong role within yourself to buoy yourself up, and also it tends to intensify the search for Father, Mother, God. Well, Father, Mother, God are represented by the 12th house. The 12th house contains Uranus in Cancer, the sign of familial issues. Uranus happens to be a skip step this lifetime. Between the South Node and the North Node, it squares them. The last node to pass or conjunct the skip step Uranus was the North Node. The node to consistently integrate this lifetime is the North Node in Aries, emotional independence, becoming stronger in an emotional sense, learning to take care of himself, stand on his own 2 feet. He's been absolutely catapulted into that this lifetime. Again, looking at Venus and Pisces, all these themes are going to repeat. That 9th house moon saves him. It's how he integrates the south and north nodes of the moon is through this moon right here in Aquarius in the 9th house. It represents emotional honesty and personal integrity, 9th house, which he has always strived for and never lost. But we're scarce commodities in show business. So this just tells me over and over again, it helps me see so much into his lifetime and who he really is. It helps me see that he was seeking refuge like in the natural world with animals, with nature, away from the, what he called the artificial world of Hollywood. It really wasn't that good for him. It did force some issues and force some growth. It did bring his inspiration to the forefront for other people to see and appreciate and give them value and meaning to their lives. But for him, he needed to retreat and get away. This Venus also opposes Saturn, which represents not such a happy period in relationship to his father and him in his life, especially his early life. When he was 3 years old, his dad left his mom. He didn't find out until he was 5 years old when he asked his dad, Dad, are you divorced? And his dad said yes. So talk about loss, abandonment, betrayal. He had that in spades. He never quite got over that. And, it's the earliest childhood wounds that stay with us the longest and go the deepest. So that fatherly betrayal, so to speak, really propels him in a way to not only individuate, find his own strength within himself, but to find forgiveness later in life and compassion toward his dad, and he did. Okay, let's see here. So he's learning to strengthen himself in many ways, certainly emotionally with this nodal axis. He's highly intuitive, he has a strong animal sense, and he's used to communicating with deep silent forms of communication. He was very good communicator, but he was not that comfortable doing it. He put on a good show. He was better at singing. He could express himself very well through his music, and he put everything into his music. You talk about a natural voice. David Cassidy had the most incredible voice I have ever heard. There's something about the magnetism and the vibration and the just the natural attraction of this voice it's like something I've never heard. It is a true God-given talent, and he was meant to share it with the world. And part of what forced the seed of his soul to crack and give fuel to that voice was his hardship with his father. This gets pretty deep, but if you get psychoanalytical, you can pretty much see that he was trying to say, hey, Dad, look at me, at certain times in his life when he thought that his dad had ignored him or put him down or shut him down. And at certain other times of his life, because he had a highly rebellious nature, it was as if he was thumbing his nose at his dad, saying, I'm not going to be successful anymore. I'm not going to let you tear me down. Nothing I do is good enough for you. Take that. I'm just going to retire, and you're not going to see me perform anymore. But he always bounced back. And he said later in life that he was letting go of all forms of revenge. And he just came to a very um, he just entered into a Piscean state. You know, this moon is balsamic. It's culminating to this Venus in Pisces, and he learned to forgive and forget and accept and embrace the lessons that were pretty much forced open by his dad. He wouldn't have gotten those inner lessons and that inner emotional strength had he not gone through that experience with his dad. His youngest half brother, who is a Sagittarius, said that next to his family and close friends, the thing he loved most were his horses. Now, you talk about past life stuff. The moon and Jupiter in Aquarius conjunct his love of all things nature in the ninth house. All things natural in the ninth house, the natural world. He just absorbed books on horses. He raised horses. He raced thoroughbreds. He bred them. He spent time in Kentucky at the Kentucky Derby. He bought and sold and raced and wagered in the whole bit. I mean, his second life was raising horses as much as he could manage when he didn't have to work. That's what he was doing. So talk about past life stuff. It's very evident here that he has been involved with horses and the spirit of the wild horse many times over. And that is a natural refuge and sanctuary and blessing and healing that he's brought into this life. I don't know what he would have done without it. He's finding his self, clarity and peace this lifetime. Real briefly, he said he had to retire at the age of 24 because he had perpetuated an image of himself that wasn't himself. He felt unworthy of all the adulation. And he said that people were beginning to think that he was superhuman when he really wasn't. Well, David Cassidy was a huge star. If you just look into his life, he was the highest grossing, highest paid star in his time between 1970 and 1974 when he was touring and doing music. He was even bigger during his time than Elvis or the Beatles or the Stones or Michael Jackson in terms of crowds and filling venues and repeatedly filling venues and having #1 records and records in the top 10. He topped them all. And then he gave it up at 24 because he said he's dying inside. He was emotionally dying inside. He called all of show business an artificial world. And I think it was seriously affecting his health and his sanity. He said, I was killing myself, but I was really dying inside. And so he stopped. He went back later, and then he stopped again, and then he went back, and then he stopped again, and then he went back again. So lots of highs and lows in the exterior world. But really what he's building up is emotional strength and building up his relationship to himself. Pluto and Taurus. He had to stop the madness at one point. He never really felt worthy of it. You know, that's a very obvious Virgo psychological state. But he says he was very fortunate. He said he's fortunate to be here, to have the clarity that he currently has, and in his more mature life, and a sense of real peace in his career. He feels really lucky that he's able to touch so many people. Well, he was meant to. He was actually absolutely meant to be in the forefront and do the work that he did in acting and singing and music production. I think I will skip the quotes. I just want to say, I want to refer to this one. In 1996 through 98, he did a Broadway show called Blood Brothers, which starred himself and his brother Sean. It's something he fell into. This was one of the highlights of his career because they were significant highs and lows. He was doing really well. He saw this play and he read the script that spoke to him so much. He told his brother he had to do it. And he was meant to do it. This was a God-given, this was very karmic and almost fated. He was meant to do it. It likened his life. Remember, he was a working class young man. He came from a working class ethic and a working class family. Fame and stardom were a shock to him, but he had such incredible talent that it came naturally. He couldn't help himself. His dad was incredibly jealous of him, and he had that to contend with. At times he thought, well, I'm doing too well. My dad's jealous. I better stop. At times he thought, I'm going to let him see me, publicly and in the media so that he will be proud of me. But nothing he ever did was good enough. He just had to give it up in terms of his emotional distress toward his dad. Embrace it. It is what it is. Forgive his dad and move on. So when he's talking about this Broadway show, Blood Brothers, it really likened his life. And he played a survivor character who had everything go wrong in his life, who had come from very meager beginnings and had to struggle his entire life, but he had a strong survivor instinct. Look at that Aries sun. Doesn't that speak to that as well? And it's being pushed into realization this lifetime from the South Node. He's had to struggle, and everything was not handed to him like it might have been in the past. So he plays this part, and he said everything that can go wrong for this character does go wrong, but he has such a joy and an appetite for life that to play him every night, I've never gotten bored. Well, what happened during, it was 84 to 86 on Broadway. What happened during this play is that he said he would lose sight of himself. He would become the character. The character would become David. He had a Cockney accent in the play, but it would come and go. And he just was, it's almost like walking between lives. It's almost like he was glimpsing a past life. Remember, he's highly intuitive. He's highly creative, and he has a very perceptive, receptive mind, moon in Aquarius. It's like having a very high antenna. But he lost himself in this play, and it really helped him better than any therapy, any decades of years of self-analysis or working with a therapy, because he became the character. And it helped him work out a lot of things on an inner level. So look at the realization stemming from the South Node. This was all meant to be. In the play, he became very strong, and he was proud of himself, and he got the acclaim that he really wanted, and he was playing the role he wanted to play, and he felt validated as a performer. And it was one of the last really huge starring roles that he had. And he took that role that had been not doing quite so well on Broadway, and he resurrected it and breathed life into it, and made it not a spectacle. He made it a phenomenon. It was a play about the assertion of your will to live, and your right to live, and your right to shine. We've already gone over that he's developing emotional maturity this lifetime. I'm not going to go into the struggles he had with his dad. That's something that anyone can see online or read a book. I read the book, Could It Be Forever? And Could It Be Forever by David Cassidy. It's an autobiography. It's a really good read. I highly recommend it. This just says about how his dad was jealous when he was around him, but his dad's jealousy and his dad's distance and his dad's disapproval really forced this seed to open and express himself and be outside and be in the dramatic work and do the music that he felt he had to do, because he felt how other people were gaining from it, and what an inspiration he was to others. Let's see, Neptune is retrograde opposing the sun. So there is a polarity point to every planet, and the natural trajectory course of Neptune, which is sort of maybe feeling insecure and needing to be dependent on other people, and not feeling really strong in your emotional security, having to find it within other people. That is on a course of self-discovery, and he really, through this play, like nothing else, discovered a lot of emotional strength and the ability to be his own boss and follow his own direction, follow his own path, and break free of the mold, so to speak, break free of the pack. Found a lot of inner strength and a lot of inner courage this lifetime from his emotional insecurities and vulnerabilities. He was meant to be here, to become prominent, to share his gifts, and to impart these gifts to others. And they were seated largely by the encouragement that he himself did not receive. Neptune whispers encouragement to us along our path, no matter how difficult. Neptune sends us signs and symbols of heading in the right direction, a profound sense of what is boundless, possible, and durable during our lives. For profound sense of what we can achieve. And remember, the north node of Neptune is Leo. I can do it. I'm good enough. I deserve it. I have a right to be here. Winding down here, this is pretty much the same thing. This is one of the deepest signatures of inner emotional healing I've ever seen in a chart. And you could see it through his life, and you could see him progress to a more spiritual state. We're not going to go into progressions or aspects. This is a comparison to Tom Petty's chart. I'll just leave it there for a moment if anybody wants to stop the tape and look at it. These are the words to the musical effects. No, I'm sorry. Actually, to the musical effects that he starred in after Blood Brothers. It was another blockbuster, and that was between 1996 and 1998. He was really on a roll toward the end of his career, and he catapulted this show to phenomenal heights. And the words to it are, "Let it shine. Let it shine on you. You got the power to make it come true. Let it shine on me. I need you to help me, to make me believe." It was such a world of encouragement to so many people. I mean, his dad was no longer living at this time, but if anything would have made his dad jealous, this would have done it, because it was David at his shiny Aries sun, Aquarius moon, best, Cancer rising. He felt deeply. He had a very deep emotional, divine feminine mystique about him. And he said this after the closing of the effects play in Las Vegas. He said, "Believe in the work of this show. It's about magic and the power of the imagination." He said, "Allow yourselves to dream. Don't be afraid to use your imagination and follow your heart. A great way to be supporting of me and what I stand for is to be kind to one another. We need to try and live the love we expect from ourselves. This is what I truly believe in my heart." And he never compromised. He always stood by his values. Where will I be in 20 years? I want to be living on an island with gray hair and a beard. I would hope that in 20 years from now, I am still as interested and as creative as the last 4 or 5 years have been for me. I would hope so. Now, there's a very controversial, I'm wrapping it up, there's a very controversial A&E documentary called The Last Session that shows him in his last days. It's a tearjerker, so brace yourself, but it's worth finding online, paying a small price and watching, because in it, well, I don't want to give it away, but it tells volumes about what we're talking about today, and it's just such a human story. It's really very, very healing, and I would say inspirational, and it gives tribute to the human spirit. And boy, he had a very, very bright light inside. He was absolutely radiant. Even in his last days, people said there was a glow about him. And he was singing songs that his father taught me to the best of his ability, but his health was failing and he was in pain. But let's see, what was my point? He said that he never gave up in his life, and he said he didn't want it. When somebody continued this question, is where do you see yourself in the next 20 years? This was after his last great um, Las Vegas show, and he was wanting to retreat again and move inward and just be by the beach and be with his friends, family, and animals. And he said, I don't know. He added to this sentence. He says, I don't know where I may be, but I know that I don't want to be here if I can no longer be creative. Jeffrey gave an example of your natural current, and real quickly he said, we all have a natural current that guides us. That's Neptune. And he said, if you consider, he told a story, if you consider a bunch of yuppies that set out on a yacht, and they set out with a bunch of martinis, and they're drinking martinis on a clear sunny day, and then suddenly the yacht becomes enveloped in a thick, all-consuming fog. They can't find their way, the compass stops working, and the tendency is to freak out. But if those of us who are spiritually oriented know that we have a link to Creator, and we have developed and cultivated that relationship to Creator, all things natural, all things spiritual, all things that have to do with the interrelatedness of all life forms, then we will know that we have a natural compass inside of ourselves, Neptune, and that compass will always find itself to another shore. It might be a shore we've never seen before or we don't recognize, but it will always take us to land. And all we have to do is remember to steer our life by that inner compass. And then he laughed and he said, how many people are prepared to live their lives in this way? Well, I think people like Tom and my friend David have found that natural current. At least they're on the path toward it. They've glimpsed it. They're on a good path. They're in a good place. One of my Lakota Sioux teachers said that at the end of a good life, they pray a prayer for a man or a woman. And they say, may they walk again as a young person into a new land. And that's my prayer for David and Tom. And I send them love, and all the good people that we talk about in our readings, we send them love, and we want to send them on their way and hope that they're in a new place, a new path, and continuing along that course that they found in this lifetime. So I hope you've enjoyed our little talk, and that some of you have found some peace or healing. If either one or two of you have found some substance and some direction in either one of these stories, Tom or David, I think they would have liked that. Thank you for coming, and welcome back.